Okay, let's get started. So yeah, thank you everybody for joining. My name is Tony Kai. I'm one of the sales engineers here at Nerdio, and we started these webinars over the summer, and this one's particularly about onboarding Nerdio to your entire MSP, right? So you're either here because of two reasons. One, you've been using Nerdio for a while. Maybe you've used it to deploy some virtual desktops, some Intune, but you know that Nerdio has a bunch more features that it can help your business in many other ways. We want to explore some of those features, and then other people are in the call maybe have installed Nerdio within the last 2 weeks or so. Um, and for you guys, it's more than just working with a go live engineer and deploying your first Azure deployment. There's a lot of things inside of Nerdio that you guys should put in place to really help you guys take full advantage of what Nerdio's capabilities are. So today we're going to kind of go through some high level stuff, starting off with creating some guardrails for common tasks that MSPs do to kind of help avoid mistakes that are very common that we see all the time, and we can put in some rules in place to help make we have this thing called workflows where you can actually enable to prevent people from doing things that cost you guys some extra money, right? So a lot of times, somebody in the help desk may not know what they're doing. They can press a button, and all of a sudden, you can see an increase in cost of Azure consumption 2 months later. So things like that, we want to turn on some features in order to kind of disable things like that from happening. We'll also kind of go through sort of user roles, right? A lot of times when you install Nerdio, the person who installed Nerdio is the only person that has access to Nerdio. So we can kind of play with some user roles and maybe give them access across to your help desk team or to your project engineering team. We'll talk about some Nerdio product releases and updates, as well as some system configuration with the Nerdio software, and then we'll sort of finish off with some white labeling of the product. So it's going to be very hands-on. If you guys have dual screens, just pull me to the side on one of my monitors, one of your monitors, and then the other monitor, log into Nerdio. What I'm going to do is actually, Morgan, if you can help me unmute everybody, I want to be able to kind of talk to people if people have any questions. You can kind of yell it out and we can address it or answer them live.
I'm going through and allowing people to use their mics, so just give me a second.
Sure. Okay, so if we can, let's all go to our own instance of Nerdio. Your instance of Nerdio is a very unique URL. I've white labeled my URL to be nmmdemo.nerdio.net, but yours is likely something that starts with web-admin and a random set of characters. Okay, so if you have any questions along the way, feel free to unmute yourself and ask that question. Right. So what we're going to do first is talk through sort of some of the cool features here on the MSP layer. So this is what we call the MSP layer. The MSP layer is the layer that you see sort of when you log into Nerdio. This is before you get into a customer account. All right, so we're going to explore a lot of these options here to kind of help you build out your Nerdio software to kind of make it really work for you. So we can start with maybe users and roles, right? So if we go to users and roles and click on role assignment, you guys should at least have like one person on this list, which is probably most likely yourself, and you're probably the super admin of the Nerdio software. But if you kind of look at the role definitions over here, you'll see that out of the box we have a bunch of different roles, right? Obviously, super admin gives you access to all the features. You have something that is super useful called account admin. So that role is intended for if you want to co-manage a customer with internal IT at a customer, you can give them access so they can log into Nerdio. And when they log into your Nerdio application, after you've white labeled it, they would see your logo and your URL. But once they get in, they don't see a list of all your customers, right? They only see themselves. So if you click on like edit next to any one of these role definitions, you'd actually be able to drill down and granularly specify which Nerdio buttons that they're able to even see or touch, right? So let's say you want to give internal IT access to Nerdio. When they log in, they obviously can see only their own account, but maybe you only allowed them to have the ability to restart session hosts, start them or stop them, but never be able to create or delete them, right? So you can kind of think about if you were to give co-management access to one of your customers, what do you want them to be able to do inside of Nerdio? So you can kind of very granularly define what the allow permissions are and what the deny permissions are, so you can fully customize the role however you like, right? So again, these predefined roles, they sort of explain what they are. There's one that's for really end user access. You can actually invite a end user from one of your customers into Nerdio as well. And if they have personal desktop, you can give them the ability to restart their own machines, perhaps, right? But there's other helpful roles. MSP help desk is sort of that level 1 help desk person, right? So if you kind of look at the description, it has access to all customers' accounts, but only limited options are selected. So I click on edit on that, you can kind of see that there's only certain functions that are enabled for those guys. So maybe somebody maybe those help desk guys, level 1 guys, can't even see backup, right? Maybe you have a different backup team. So I would just spend some time in here, drill down through each one of these role definitions, maybe customize them however you like. The way we see it is, somebody's going to be obviously the super admin, but maybe project engineers have a different role. Level 2 help desk has a different role. Level 1 help desk has maybe a different role. And of course, that the co-managed client may have a different role. So that's number one. You don't have to do it today or do it right now, but just know this is something that you can assign somebody to. So to really assign somebody, just go to the role assignment page, go down to the bottom, hit add, and pick the role that you want them to be. So if you click on account admin, it allows you to pick which customer that account admin can log into. And here you just pretty much type your customer's email address. So I'll say customer abc at whatever.com. And you'll see here it says invite and add customer. What that's going to do is invite that customer into your Nerdio manager's tenant as a guest user, so they can access the Nerdio application. Okay. But if you kind of switch the role to, like, let's say internal help desk, you can just type the person name in. That's an employee that works at your MSP, and it'll search the Azure AD or Entra ID directory, and you can kind of give them access to that role as well. Okay, so anybody have any questions about users, roles, and access? Let me know. The next section I want to kind of point your attention to is the list of buttons that are over here, right? So if you look at your Nerdio compared to my Nerdio, the immediate button after add accounts is probably global images, but you notice I have a bunch of other dashboards. So what these dashboards are is what we call global views. So let me just click on backup dashboard here for a second. So a global view is a function that creates a dashboard that lets you look at multiple customers, for this instance, backups at the same time. So what I've done is basically created a dashboard and this dashboard basically peers across all my customers, and it only picks out backups that have failed and had an error last night, or basically something that maybe isn't protected, right? I don't necessarily care about backups that have been completed or that have been protected, because those servers, they're already protected and backup is working. I really only want to bubble up to the top things that aren't working. And you kind of see on the side here, it looks at not only one account, but multiple accounts. Right, so the beauty of this is, every single day you don't have to go into each account and basically drill into the backup section to see if things have failed to backup last night. You can kind of click on this dashboard and it'll actually traverse all your clients inside Nerdio and pull all the failed backups and bring them to the top. All right, so this is a second example. We call this all host pools. So if you really wanted to, you can kind of see all the host pools for Azure Virtual Desktop across all your clients in a single page. Same for session hosts, same for user sessions, and there's a lot more dashboards that you can create and customize. So this one right here, if you're using Nerdio for Intune, you can pretty much basically look at all your endpoints across all your clients and then have you just show all the ones that are non-compliant and bubble up those up to the top. So to be able to configure those, kind of head over to the settings section, and we're going to go over to the global views, and you can start adding them here. It's very easy to add one. If you want to add a new one, click on add global view, give it a name. Right, and then I can say, is this global view only visible to me? Is it available and only visible to a specific role, or is it available to be seen by everyone? Right, and then these are the types of global views you can kind of set Nerdio to have you look at. So session host, user sessions, host pools, which I have examples up here for. You can look at Intune apps, Intune compliance, device compliance, app policies. You can look at the status of like Windows updates across all your endpoints. things are backups, servers, desktop images, all those things you can kind of pull out across all your customers and show them all in one place. Okay. So once you've created them, you can kind of drag them up and down to kind of reorder them the way you like, or you can actually drag them into one another, and it'll create like a sort of a nested tree type of thing. Okay. Any questions about that? Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask. The next thing I want to point you guys to is sort of the other settings in the settings area, right? So in the settings area, we have something called so integrations. Let's see, we go to integrations. Yeah, so integrations is an area where you can kind of set up like a lot of global settings. For example, if you're creating FS Logics profiles for each customer every time you onboard them, you can actually add them in here as a global setting. And so you can manage these common settings across all your customers in one place. So for example, if the latest version of FS Logics had just come out and you don't trust that version because FS Logics sometimes deploys bugs in the latest version, you may want to go back to one that works. You can specify the version of FS Logics that gets deployed across all your customers in this global FS Logics configuration profile. Right, you may want to set up a flip-flop users directory as a default across all your customers. You might want to set that as 1. You may want to use a FS Logics setting that helps you redirect the team's temp folders outside of the user profile. You can put in the XML file here for that. So once you save that, you can give it a name. And the next time you spin up a new Azure Virtual Desktop client and you use FS Logics, you don't have to go and set specifically what that customer needs the same way for every other customer because you've set this setting here globally. And same for RDP profiles. RDP profiles are basically the RDP settings that you can set up here. Now, I wouldn't go play with this. You can easily break stuff. But if you kind of read about the description of each profile or each type of setting, you can click on the little eye icon here, and it'll tell you what the valid inputs are. So you can type it in here. Right, so if you want to set up profiles for like SOC compliance or any type of compliance, you can kind of add them in here. And so when you add a new customer, next time you create a host pool, you can just hit the drop down for the profile properties and then just pick one that you've already preset before. Okay, the next area I want you guys to look at is the environment section. So in the environment section, I want you to just look at notifications, right? So notifications allows Nerdio to build any over hundreds and hundreds of different notifications. We can actually send emails to your PSA in form of a knock email. So you first have to kind of start by enabling this. So if you guys are following along, please click enable. It'll enable notifications. If you enable notifications, that's what gives you this drop down here. Otherwise, this drop down doesn't exist in your Nerdio portal. And then right after you enable the notifications feature, for this to work, you have to add a new email address. Now, this email address doesn't need to be your email address, right? It could be a no reply email address, but it's an email address that has a EOP01 license. So at least something that has at least an Exchange Online Plan 1 license. So it needs to be able to kind of send email as that email address. So you would click link mailbox, and you would log in as that email address and MFA in. Once you MFA in, you can actually test this email to see if it actually works. Now, for this to also work, you need to add this email as some kind of user role in the user and role assignments as of today, right? So I think they're working on making that not a requirement, but whatever email address you add into the notification section, for now, you need to add them as any role assignment inside of this area. Okay. And then here you can kind of enable announcements from Nerdio. You can enable like sort of billing notifications. So every time Nerdio sends out an invoice, we can also have it emailed to your accounts payables team or something like that, or RevOps team. You can kind of enable those as well. So once you've enabled the notification section and linked the mailbox, again, this left button will show up here. And what you're going to be able to do is click on conditions, and let's play with some of this, right? So I can add any condition that Nerdio can see. So if I click on add, you can name this condition anything, but if you go to the task list, there's literally hundreds of different things you can have Nerdio look for and report back on if something fails or not. So, for example, if the autoscale process run by any user basically fails or errors out, that may be something that you want a email to get sent to your help desk with the details of why it failed, right? So you can create these notification conditions one by one, or you can actually group them. So maybe for another example is let's say somebody tries to wipe an Intune device from Nerdio, right? Any action, whether it's completed or canceled or error, you may want to have a ticket get opened, right? Whether that was triggered by an internal help desk person or by a co-managed internal IT person. So take a look at this list. There's literally lots and lots of different things you kind of monitor and look for, including backup failures, and autoscale failures, Azure Files autoscale failures, you know, errors spinning up your host pool in the morning. You know, so all those are something you can kind of select and get a report on if that function fails. So this is where you build your conditions. And then after you've built your conditions, you can actually go to the actions button and then create the rule so it actually sends it out, right? So if I click the condition I just created, maybe I have a condition where a new user is added to a customer. I want to go and send that email, and this is where that send from email address comes in play. This is where it gets sent from, and then you can specify, you know, whatever at mymsp.com, right? So a lot of MSPs have specific email addresses that are set up so they can open up the tickets specific to a customer. You can kind of type that email address in there. You can include the task details, as well as call out some kind of API function external to Nerdio. Right. Once you create the condition, you can pretty much use this. Now, people always ask us, do we have any integrations with XYZ tool? While we don't have direct integration with any XYZ tool, stuff like this kind of gives us the flexibility to kind of, you could say we integrate with anything, right? Because all it is sending out alerts to various different tools you guys use. If you guys have any questions about the notifications, either drop it in the chat or unmute yourself and feel free to ask. The next thing I want to bring up is sort of this thing we call workflows. So workflows are different pre-canned things we're looking for. So let me think about how to explain that. So let's say let's say this is a very common scenario that MSPs kind of deal with all the time. Somebody in the help desk goes and changes a VM from one size to a different size, right? Because somebody called the help desk to say something was slow, right? Now they may be used to doing that when you had an on-prem environment where you had a Hyper-V or an ESXi server, right? A lot of times when you buy a piece of physical hardware with 12 cores and 64 gigs of RAM, you know, and you look at each guest VM has like 4 cores each and, you know, 32 gigs of RAM each, right? So they're pretty much over allocating those 4 physical processors. So people do that all the time on-prem because somebody called in and said something was slow. Now, if you tend to kind of take the same approach in Azure, you can kind of cost the company a lot of money, right? So this is just an example, but if I click on a task category that we have pre-canned out of the box, so if you click on workflows and task categories, you'll notice that a lot of this stuff is already there. But if you click on one that says cost impacting, these are literally all the things somebody can do inside of Azure or really inside of Nerdio or Azure that can make your Azure costs different than it was the month before. So if somebody added a new host or resized a VM or created a VPN gateway or created a new server or started a server, those are all actions that cost money, right? So what you can do here is create these rules. Now, of course, we gave you ones out of the box, but you can create your own rules. I can say I want to create a rule where, you know, if somebody created a server, resized a server, deleted a server, or assigned a reservation to a server, maybe I want somebody to approve that so that action just doesn't happen right away. Because what happens a lot of times is somebody goes and changes something, and obviously Microsoft will start the cost right then and there. But a lot of MSPs don't really reconcile and check their invoices every single month. And by the way, if you do something like towards the last week of the month, you actually don't see the full impacts of that change to about 2 invoices from now, right? So if you do something today, you may not see that reflecting your bill come sort of till December. Now, if that was the case and you spun up a really large VM and people don't even know about it till 2 months later, then by the time they find out, and that's if the MSP is even checking their invoices every month, by that point you could have lost a couple of hundreds or maybe thousands of dollars at that point, right? So you really want to watch these things that can cost money. So that's really what the workflows are made for. Once you have these rules set up, you can create these approval rules. If I click on add approval rule, you can just say, monitor for cost changes, right? And you can say if somebody on the account level tries to make a cost impacting change or something that's destructive or something that requires a reservation update or a change, and the submitters happen to be somebody who's in sort of the help desk role or even level 1 role or even like the co-managed internal IT person who tries to make any of these changes, you can set like maybe the MSP's IT admin to get an email saying, hey, somebody from this group tried to make a cost impacting change. Here's the cost impact. Do you approve this change, yes or no? And you can kind of take this rule and apply it across all accounts or very specific ones, depending on what you want to monitor for. So this is really important because if you don't do this, somebody can make a change willy-nilly, and then you guys may not notice 5-6 months later, and then be paying that extra cost for a very long time until somebody does an actual assessment, right? To figure out that, hey, somebody from 8 months ago did this change, right? Well, why did somebody let them do it? Okay, so once you hit that, hit OK, the next time somebody goes into the product and actually does one of those things in those categories, that action won't proceed and happen right away. Somebody will get an email, and that change will only happen if that person reads that email and hits the approve button. Okay. So let's move on to sort of the white label section. So if I go back to the settings tab here, I can go down to white label. And white label is really where you can get to change the colors and everything about how Nerdio looks and feels, right? So I can use different themes. You would probably pick a theme that matches your MSP. If I click on custom here, I can click on this little primary color box and change this to whatever I want it to look like. Right? And kind of gives you examples of like what the primary click button is, what does a grayed out button look like, what does a button with a white background look like, all those things. You can change the secondary color as well. Let's make it look Christmas-like. All right, and then links, gives you examples of what that looks like. And then here, right, you can actually change the logo that comes up here to any logo you want. So I could change this. Maybe this is my MSP's logo, right? I'm gonna make it look like that. The reason for this change, not really for yourself, really, right? Because if you're the ones only logging into this, you may not care whether this is Nerdio or your own MSP. But once you start co-managing customers and start inviting your end customers into the portal, if you wanted to do that, you want it to basically fly the flag of your MSP. Right? At the same, you don't really want the end customer to know that you're using a tool called Nerdio. So you can change the favicon, you can change the logo, you can type in like your support email address, and you can even change the application name. So your Azure portal, or whatever you want to call it, right? You can call it that, and then hit save, and be able to change the look and feel of this entire portal so it matches the color scheme of your MSP. The other thing you could do, and you can kind of see I did it to mine, is change the URL and customize that as well. Now for this, you do need a wildcard SSL cert that you would have purchased for your MSP's URL. But we have a help article I can take and I'll share it with you guys in the chat. If you go to help.nerdio.net, you can go to search for custom URL. And the first thing that comes up should be instructions with step-by-step screenshots on how you can actually customize the URL of Nerdio Manager. So you can make it anything yourmspname.com. Throw that in the chat. If you guys have any questions. Oh, Will's already doing some of this stuff for me. Okay, awesome. Okay, so while we're in Nerdio, I also wanted to point you out to this website. So if you go to help.nerdio.net, pay attention to features and updates, right? So Nerdio is a piece of software that basically gets worked on every single day, gets updated on at least twice a month, right? The first update on the month is usually the public preview, right? And then sort of the middle of the month, around the 15th of the month, we release the same version, but with all the little bugs that we people have who upgraded to the public preview first have reported, and we've kind of fixed those. So if you kind of look at this website, I'll post that in the chat as well. It's something you should bookmark, right? And you should also sign up for a Nerdio account. If you sign up for a Nerdio account, you can actually mark this and follow this article. So what this does is every time we edit this page, you'll get an email address, or you get an email sent to you with the latest updates. So I love this page because as somebody who's super geeky and techie, I want to see like at every release, what's the newest functions that came out and how can it help my business, right? Or how can I help my end users? So a lot of times things that get updated are things that you guys have all asked us for. So if you guys want to submit a feature, there's multiple ways to do it. You come to the community forums here where a lot of people post feature requests. You can email one of your account reps. You can email one of the sales engineers. What we do is kind of take those take those feature requests that people give us and sort of forward them off to the product team. The product team basically works with us on a monthly basis to prioritize which features get built, right? Like if you request a feature that really only one MSP is going to ever really benefit from, we'll likely kind of push that to the back burner. But a lot of the features that people request make a lot of sense, and we sort of prioritize them. So the average turnaround time, probably like 2 months later, you'll probably see like a release. We feel like that the release can be beneficial and can help multiple people. All right, so if you kind of look at this last previous version, 4.7, that's coming up, we've already committed to these features that are coming out in the next release. So if you kind of take a look at this, super cool that we tell you what we're working on. And really by the time 4.7.0 actually comes out, you will not only get these committed features, but a lot of little features we're able to kind of also fit in there during that release cycle. So currently, if you guys are using Nerdio, you should be on 4.6.1. Now, the reason why we talk about updates and why it's so important here is because, every time we do these assessments, right? Once, every single day we help partners sometimes, and this is something that we want to be able to get across to you guys on the call as well. So not only do we have regular break fix support and stuff like that, but if you have a customer that you've onboarded to Nerdio sort of a while ago, it's always good to kind of give us a call. We call these Azure Business Review calls, where we spend an hour kind of looking through your customers' accounts one by one, and we can actually look to see if your environment's performing as well as it can, if your costs are as low as possible, and 8 times out of 10, we find cost savings for the MSP as well as performance gains. Right, it's very rare that we come across a customer who's done everything absolutely correct, and there's nothing we can kind of recommend to increase performance and or lower costs. A lot of times we can actually do both, right? Not only can we lower the cost, but we can actually improve the performance at the same time, by the tunes of hundreds or if not thousands a month, right, in savings. So I welcome you guys to reach out to us. After you've onboarded a customer is also a good time to do those things, right? So typically the way it works is, you start your journey off by doing a cost estimator with us, right? You work with your sales rep to do a cost estimate, and once the customer approves it, we take you through our go live engineering process, where you work with a team of dedicated engineers to kind of help you deploy the environment. And about, I think, 2 weeks after that go live, you'll get an email from us saying, hey, it's time to do your Azure Business Review call. Again, it's an hour call. You set it up with somebody like myself, and we'll actually go through your environment, make sure that the person who onboarded the customer did everything correct. It's never a bad idea to get a second pair of eyes on something like that, right? But the point I kind of went through all that is a lot of times we have the MSP share screens, and we find that the version they're on is super out of date. Right, they could be 5 months out of date, right? So if you're 5 months out of date, not only you're getting, not getting new features, but a lot of bug fixes that we fixed throughout the time, you're not getting, you're not taking advantage of those things. So it's always good to kind of create a cadence, whether you guys are on the call can do this or somebody else needs to do this, but set a reminder for yourself. At least update it once every 2 months if you don't care about the latest updates. At least update it every 2 months, but try not to be super far behind. Right. So sometimes when people open a ticket with us saying, hey, something doesn't work or something is broken or about it, chances are we've already fixed that. And all you have to do is just upgrade to the latest version to get that fixed. But the upgrade to the latest version is super easy. You come into Nerdio, right? You come down to the bottom of the main MSP layer, click on Updates, and in the Update section, you could click on find the general availability one and click on Deploy. Now you don't, if you're super far behind, you don't have to go one by one. You don't have to go like 4.5 to 4.6 to 4.61. Wherever version you're at now, you can kind of upgrade to the latest version without a problem. So once you click Deploy, there's a little PowerShell you get to copy, right? And what you do is go into your portal.azure.com or click on this button, it'll take you there. It's going to launch Azure Cloud Shell. So you sign into your MSP's tenant. Now you got to be global admin to do this. But if you have a Cloud Shell already set up, it'll just load Cloud Shell. Otherwise, it'll tell you to create a Cloud Shell account, which is just a single button to create one. And once your C prompt comes up, you just paste the PowerShell you copied from Nerdio onto this PowerShell Cloud Shell, and then just press enter. Right in this PowerShell, it already kind of specifies what app name it is and what the resource group the stuff is in, subscription ID and everything. You press enter. It takes about 5 minutes to update. So in that 5-minute time period, obviously the Nerdio application is not going to function. It'll go down for 5 minutes, but everything that Nerdio is controlling will continue to function. Nerdio is not in the critical path of like your end users logging into their desktops or their Intune devices being managed by Nerdio. It has nothing to do with how that functions. But yeah, after 5 minutes, it'll tell you at the end that the complete installation is completed. Come back to Nerdio, hit refresh, and you should see that you're on the latest version. Okay. Take a pause here. Anybody have any questions? Okay. So let's see. We can go move on to other things so we have more time. I want to show you this, scripted actions, right? Scripted actions is basically a huge library of different PowerShell commands or PowerShell scripts that we've created. And a lot of the ones that we've created are requests from partners that use those applications. So let me kind of explain what a scripted action is. So scripted action is nothing more than PowerShell. So if you look at this PowerShell, I can go to View, and I can go to Show. And this script basically installs Chocolatey if it isn't already installed, sets the command line set execution to kind of let you install stuff, downloads Chocolatey, installs Chocolatey, and then runs the Chocolatey command to basically install Notepad++ from the Chocolatey repository. Right, so that's a pretty simple, straightforward installation script. But there's other scripts as well, right? So if you're using Sophos endpoint protection, for example, the script is a little bit more complex. If you click on View here, the script asks you for variables. So if you're using the Sophos endpoint protection, right, or with Intercept X, you guys have access to the Cloud Ops portal for Sophos, and in that Cloud Ops portal, you can extract your auth key, your API key, and your location ID. So, but what this script does, it goes out to Sophos Central, and it grabs your latest version of your endpoint agent that you have, and then uses API to basically install that agent and put it in that customer's machine group. The reason why this is a scripted action is because when you're using Azure Virtual Desktop, sometimes people don't want or can't install stuff on the image directly, right? So if you're using an RMM tool or a EDR endpoint, a lot of times when you install those pieces of software on your image and try to sysprep it, it fails. So there's ways to kind of install those applications when the host gets built, right? So you can run these scripted actions on the host when the host gets built using automation. But again, these scripts are ones that we've created to do very specific tasks. So you want to install OneDrive per machine mode, you can do this, right? By the way, anybody who's using Nerdio now, the out-of-the-box configuration for the marketplace image has OneDrive installed incorrectly, right? So sometimes when if you're new to Nerdio and you're onboarding a customer, you may run across an issue where OneDrive can't sign in for the end user. If that's the case, just run this OneDrive per machine install. It basically installs it the correct way, and that kind of fixes that issue. But there's a lot of other tools in here like ThreatLocker, Blackpoint, Zoom, Ignite, all those tools that people use day in and day out. Scripted actions are here. Now, for you to use this, you have to click on the dropdown and go to assign this script to different accounts. Right, you can assign it to all accounts, which is what I recommend. Press OK, and it's going to assign that. Well, it gave me an error because it's already assigned. Like this one isn't assigned to all accounts, so I'm gonna go ahead, assign accounts, all accounts, press OK. For this script to be available to be used inside a customer, it needs to be assigned. So if I go to accounts, and I go into a customer by clicking on manage, you can see that if I go to the scripted actions menu here, that although there are some scripts, because of certain scripts I've assigned to all accounts, the list I had before was way longer than just one page, right? Because I didn't go through and assign those scripts to be used. So it's a good idea when you're starting out with Nerdio, go through the scripted actions list, pick out the applications you guys are using, and then assign them to all accounts. We also have something called Azure Runbooks. Azure Runbooks are PowerShells that runs not on the Windows context, but on the Azure hypervisor context. So this is really more for more advanced stuff, but like things that don't run on a VM. So for example, if you want to shrink the operating system disk from a 128 gig disk to a 64 gig disk, you could run this runbook, assign this to a customer, run the runbook against a specific virtual desktop VM or server VM, and it'll actually reduce the size because your Windows operating system is not using more than 64 gigs. So very rarely do people want to do that, but if you're super uber conscious about cost, you may want to do that to save the extra money, right? So there's a lot of things in here. This is a library of stuff that we've created, but you could certainly add a new script and basically PowerShell anything you'd like. So I'll give you an example of like how you would use some of these runbooks or scripted actions. If I go back to accounts and I go into a customer, maybe I want to have my image automatically wake up on a monthly basis or a weekly basis and update itself. But I don't want to do it manually, right? Because we find a lot of MSPs not updating their images because they see it as a tedious task. So if I go to desktop images and click on a VM that is in a turned off state, I could power it on. Before I press OK and power that machine on, I can actually turn on this option that says run the following scripted actions for the desktop image, WinHard image. So what I could do here is turn this on, and I can say I want to update my Windows. Oh, I'm in the runbook section. Update Windows 10. I can update my Office suite. I can update my Teams. Right, it's important to update Teams because Teams get updated by itself. But if you re-image your machine and your image has an older version of Teams, then the version of Teams pretty much goes back, right, to a previous version. You may want to update OneDrive for machine level. So these are like common things I maybe want to update. I can update my Chrome, my Chocolatey, whatever I want, right? And then what I want to do is actually schedule this image to be turned off after a certain amount of time. So you guys probably know that updating these things, if you have been keeping this image up to date, should take no longer than an hour. So let's say I give it a 3-hour window for these updates to complete. After it completes, it's smart enough to turn the machine off, right? You want to turn this image off because a lot of times what we see is people turn the machine on with good intentions to update the image, but then somebody calls the help desk and says, I got a fire, please go on site. And then people leave the desk and go on site and they forgot they've left the machine on. Depending on the size of your golden image, I've seen people who have 8 core machines running for over 6 months because they forgot to turn it off. Right? So obviously that costs money. You don't want it to happen. So you want to check the box here and specify a time where after these images, after this image gets updated, it'll actually turn itself off. Then the last part you want to do is basically schedule this image or schedule this task to happen on a repeated weekly basis. So maybe if I know Windows does Windows Tuesday update patches, maybe on a weekly, on a maybe the following Monday, or after a week's gone by and people have figured out that all the patches are good and there's no bad patch to exclude. Maybe by Monday at 9 a.m. I want to wake this image up and have Nerdio run through all these update sequence of these applications. And then wait 3 hours, shut the machine down, and then go through the sysprep process. Right. So if you do that, you can have Nerdio pretty much automate the updating of your image, and then subsequently, if you like, you can have Nerdio re-image your machines on a weekly basis as well, right? If you want to take that a step further. Okay, so let's see what else. Any questions you guys have? Feel free to
Hey Tony, this is Will. I got a
Hey, well,
question. I'm wondering if people that are on this webinar, we went through a few things on those global settings that Tony had mentioned, and one of the maybe most basic but also really important items is setting up notifications. So that way you can be notified when conditions happen within a customer environment. It could be something failed or somebody added a server and there's going to be more costs or anything like that. Just a quick show, thumbs up, heart, whatever emoji you want to use in the chat. How many of you are actually using the notifications feature today? And we'll give you a minute to reply in the chat.
yeah, I would say it's probably very low, Will, because if you have to actually do something to see the button, even I don't know
Yep.
if we can do something to make the button like already show, but when you click on it, it's like, hey, you go to link your, mailbox or something.
Yep. I see
So
Kevin
sure.
Kevin gave a thumbs up. I see some people in the chat saying they're just setting it up. So
Implementing it up. Yeah.
yeah, I really recommend this. I mean, this allows you all to know when something happens before your users start calling in some cases. So I would highly recommend that. And my other recommendation is don't worry about this being a massive deal or taking off too much at once. Figure out a couple key things, right? If you're using auto scale, I want to get notified, when auto scale process fails. Like that's pretty basic. You don't have to go create 50 or 100 notifications right out of the gate. But as you're going through there are some critical things like VM starting, things like that when servers or VMs get created. If I want to buy a reserved instance, for example. So some of the things that Tony has in here. So I highly, highly recommend that. And I think we're going to continue to do some things to make that even easier and print the portal. And then I personally, I like workflows so much. Tony talked about how workflows create gates. So the problem with notifications is you're reactive. I got notified that this thing happened and now I have to go react to it. Workflows allows you to be more proactive for items that your team maybe is doing in there, like somebody is trying to destroy a user or remove an image or a VM or something like that. And it gives you the choice to allow that or not after you've had a chance to think about it. So usually what I see partners doing is set up notifications first, right? That's good. It's simple. It's straightforward. And then what you can do afterwards is think about, well, what are the things I'm tired of getting notified of that people are doing and having to react to? And then I can start creating workflows for it. And we give you these ones out of the box that Tony's showing on the screen. So you might just say, Nerdio makes it kind of easy for destructive tasks. And destructive for me is always kind of scary. So let's just set up this for destructive or cost impacting, and let's try it for a couple weeks and let's see the impact to the business and to our customers. And it might not come up every single day, right? You might not get that notification every single day, but when you do get it 3 months from now, you're going to be glad that you did. So those are really important things, I think, and probably two that are fairly simple to set up, but can really have a huge return on the small time investment in terms of configuring them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, great examples. Great reiteration of why you should do this. Yeah. Actually, let's just show something else in the cost estimator. This has always kind of annoyed me, but if you guys go to cost estimator, a lot of times when you install Nerdio for the first time, it actually doesn't default you to the list of cost estimates. It defaults you to a cost estimator that loads up quite immediately after you press the cost estimator button, but it also loads it to like South Central as the default region, right? So obviously, we have partners kind of all around the world, right? You don't want to default the cost estimator to show South Central every single time, and then forcing you to have to change this to the specific region of your choice. What you could do here is go ahead and click on this little hyperlink on the side here. It says cost or saved estimates once the calculator loads. So I want you guys to actually do this with me. So click on cost estimator. Give it a second to load. And when it loads, you're gonna go to the bottom line here and click on saved estimates. When I click on save estimates, you guys likely will have next to nothing on this list because if you guys are just starting out, you have nothing. But click on the little gear icon on the top right corner. This little gear icon is gonna help us default some of the views, right? So I like to show mine only off. The reason why I want that is is I not only want to see the quotes that I've made, but I want to see the quotes that my colleagues have made in Nerdio. So turn that off. That's so you can kind of see all your quotes. I want to default this to manage, which is on. So by default, I believe is off. Default to manage basically allows you to jump to this list instead of loading a new cost estimate every single time. And what you could do is default your region to the primary region of choice. So for example, if you're an MSP in Virginia, you're not going to use South Central, right? You're not going to use West US. You're going to probably likely, for 99% of the time, probably use US East 1 or East 2 as your region. So pick the region closest to yourself. And then finally, pick your currency. So once you do that, all you have to do is click out of the box. And then next time you click on the cost estimator button, it'll just load this page as well as opposed to the full the cost estimator page. So for those who kind of maybe are struggling to pick a region, US East 1, East 2, they're both in Virginia. East 3 is coming out soon. That's in Georgia. South Central is in San Antonio. North Central is in Chicago area. Central US is Iowa. West 2 is in Seattle or Washington State. West 1 or US West is in San Jose, and West 3 is in Arizona. So that's for the US. Canada East is Montreal. Canada Central is Toronto. And don't ask me about everybody else because I have no idea. Like North Europe, I know is in Ireland. This Australia, Southeast and East, Melbourne and Sydney. So depending on where you guys are coming in from.
One other thing I'll interject here in our as we start to wind down this webinar, and we have a few minutes left, is there's one other feature that I think might be valuable for some people in here. Just quick again, show of hands, thumb raises, emoji, whatever you guys want in the chat or reaction. I'm assuming most people on this call are technical. Is that accurate? Are most of you technical? We have some sales or operations people. Yeah, see some hands raised. Perfect. Okay. So one thing too for technical folks that I think is really good is you want to protect yourself. I'm a sales guy. You want to protect yourself from guys like me sometimes. You don't want salespeople out there quoting things and playing with the calculator and making promises to your customers about certain things. And so we created this thing called resource rules. Tony knew exactly where I was going. And resource rules allow you to be able to pre-select the virtual machine types that your users have access to who are interacting with this tool. So that could be something very good where you don't want a rep, being able to quote out a V3 machine, or you want them to come to you to quote out, things that are AMD or GPU enabled. And so you can make that really, really long list of available machines much shorter. And this helps on the sales side, right? Keeping guys like me in line, but it also helps on the technical side, because now when it comes time for you to add a machine to a customer's environment, that list is now filtered to ones that you've maybe pre-selected. So really, really nice way to be able to do that. And again, get rid of some of that noise, right? I always say one of the great things about Azure is it's this massive tub of Legos. You can build literally anything you want, from a Barbie dream house to the Death Star, and a piano, the Titanic. There's some cool new ones out there if you like Legos. But that also becomes kind of difficult when you're like, I just need to get a VM created. So really nice. And Tony, I don't know if you want to show a little bit more in depth that feature.
Yeah. I was going to piggyback for what you said, right? Like I always say, if you want to search for something as simple as a 2-core 8-gig machine, there's actually like 40 or 50 of them available, and Microsoft does it for a reason, right? That these SKUs are different for a reason. But some of these VM SKUs are maybe 4, 5, 6 years old, and you may want to exclude those from review, right? So what you can do is come to Nerdio, create a resource rule that says these are the ones that my MSP is going to use, right? Instead of hitting the drop down and seeing every single possible SKU that'll ever be used, maybe I want to, if you guys ever come to a training camp, there's only 5 families of VMs that 99% of MSPs will ever use, right? And you're probably never going to use anything but a V5, so you want to maybe filter that list to down to V5. Maybe you guys are a fan of AMD machines versus Intel. You can pick only AMD machines. You can specify what the maximum amount of gigs of RAM that each VM can be. You can specify what type of disks show up on the drop-down list when you pick disks. So you kind of make your hundreds and hundreds of Azure SKUs down to just a handful. It can make coding much easier. It can reduce the amount of mistakes engineers make when they just have a huge list to pick from. All right, a lot of people, when they need like a 4-core 16 gig of RAM machine, they just kind of pick anything that's 4 core 16, not knowing what the SKU really means. So you know, we can teach you about what these SKUs mean and which ones you'll use 99% of the time. And what you could do is then create a rule that blocks out, filters out all the noise. So I'll add that to my list. I forgot about that one. That's good.
Yep. Good. So we only have a few minutes left here, so we'll open up the floor for any questions that anybody has, or if anybody's kind of followed along and started doing it. If you have run into any issues or want some advice, we're happy to lend it to you. Feel free. You can come off and mute if you want to be brave, but otherwise, feel free to use the chat, which is totally fine. And in addition to that, while we're waiting to see if anybody has any questions here, remember that you have a full team of people behind you here at Nerdio. Every single one of you has what's called a partner success manager assigned to your MSP that can help you with all of this stuff in a one-on-one basis, kind of talking through it, helping you with configuring it, as well as our full support team. So lots of resources. Don't feel like you're out there on your own trying to figure it out. We've done it many times before, and we really enjoy being able to help you all out.
Yeah, and I'm actually curious because this is the first time we've actually done one of these sort of like introduction to Nerdio basics calls. Because what we find is people are rushing to get a customer deployed and they kind of miss all these things that we talked about today. Was today helpful? Was what I showed you helpful? I guess that's a rhetorical question, maybe. Sure it is, but is it valuable, I guess? Awesome. Maybe we do one of these for things that are common mistakes inside of a customer that we see all the time.
Yeah, and all of you
Sort of
keep the ideas coming, right? We'd love to do that. Maybe I like that idea. Hopefully that'd be useful for you all as well. Common mistakes that we see. We'll keep doing these types of webinars. So we love hearing that feedback on what would be most useful to you all. So with that, we appreciate everybody joining. Thank you so much for your time, and we will talk soon.
All right. Take care, everybody. Remember to do your reservations and your Azure Hybrid benefits and toggle the button.